Hello, I'm here with a video counting down the 100 best superhero comics of all time as chosen by the writers for Die With Your Mask On, a fanzine that I publish with Alex Eklund. For Die With Your Mask On number 3, we had a panel of 11 writers, all contributed top 100 lists. And then we merged those together and created a final list. We then wrote about every series, and this issue counts them down. And this entire issue is taken up with this list and supporting text pieces. Statistics, personal statements from each of the contributors about their experience making the list, all behind a lovely cover by Kevin Newbern, commissioned specifically for this issue. This is an homage cover to Comics Journal number 210 from 1999, where the Comics Journal did the same thing. They did it for comics of the 20th century in the English language, so a much broader list. I believe only features 6 to 8 comics that you could consider superhero comics. This is nothing but. So, anyway, I have done some other videos on my channel chatting with each of the list makers, and now I'm going to count down these things so you can get a closer look at some of this stuff. I'm not going to linger too long. I'm going to try to move quickly, but thought it'd be worth taking an individual look at some of these books. I did similar videos with that old journal list, 10 of them counting down from 1 to 100. So I am going to start counting down. I don't know how many I'm going to do right now. You'll probably know because you'll see it in the title of the video. But let's see what we got. So at number 100, The Dark Knight Strikes Again by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley. This is a pretty infamous comic for a lot of people. Generally fans of The Dark Knight Returns hated it. I know Frank Miller was paid a bundle to make it, and DC had no say really over what he handed in. And they weren't exactly happy with what they got, and I don't know that it sold particularly well once people saw the first issue. But they published it. It's one of the stranger superhero comics ever put out by the big two. Looking at it now, many years later, it is not nearly as shocking as it was at the time. But yeah, it has become something of a art comics darling and is still loathed by a lot of mainstream comic fans. At number 99, Zenith by Grant Morrison and Steve Yowell. Both UK creators. Kind of hard to explain Zenith. It's good. It's early Grant Morrison. Starts off a lot better than it finishes, which is something you can say about quite a bit of Grant Morrison's writing. Steve Yowell's art is fantastic, but it's a fairly early entrant in the deconstructing comics subgenre. Zenith is a guy who's more interested in being famous and a celebrity than actually being a superhero. Available in 4 volumes from 2000 AD. Not sure if it's been reprinted since, but it feels like the sort of thing that will get reprintings over the years. Worth checking out. I actually read it for the first time when I was preparing my list and enjoyed it. Number 98, Black Panther by Christopher Priest, Sal Velluto, and various others. I think the run is about 49 issues, and when it started off, this is volume 1, when it started off, Christopher Priest was really doing this kind of Tarantino-esque, it's kind of funny, he had these title cards he would do, and he'd have these static moments where he played for gags. It started to really develop over time, and once Sal Valuto came aboard as the artist, it really kind of hit its groove. It's fun. This is a highlight sequence for me. Maybe it's not the right one. Anyway, there is a sequence where he, the modern Black Panther, through some, I can't remember, some storytelling device, ends up having to interact with Jack Kirby's Black Panther from the 70s. And it's pretty amazing. Very, very ingenious device. Anyway, kind of fun comics and kind of neglected comics at this point. Ultimately, maybe the best thing to come out of the whatever that imprint was called at the time, Marvel Knights. There were bigger hits, but this ultimately I think was probably the best thing to come out of that era. Number 97, Suicide Squad by John Ostrander, Kim Yale, Luke McDonnell, and a whole bunch of other artists. This ran for 60-something issues from the late 80s into the early 90s. This centers, a group of supervillains who are offered, maybe reduced sentences, perks, if they will take on government missions that nobody else wants, hence the name Suicide Squad. It was a revival of an earlier, kind of more military-based concept from earlier DC Comics. This has the same writer the whole way through, John Ostrander. His wife, Kim Yale, also contributes. She passed away at some point, and I can't remember if it was during the course of this series or not. It's kind of meat and potatoes. A lot of people might consider it to be boring. I would call it consistent, and is very fondly remembered. Number 96, Squadron Supreme by Mark Gruenwald and various artists. I guess Bob Hall was kind of the main guy, and then I think Paul Ryan steps in near the end to help. This stars the Squadron Supreme, which are an alternate Earth, basically a version of the Justice League in the Marvel Universe, and what happens on their world when they decide to solve Earth's problems, and what happens with that, and what kind of fallout there is. This tackles sort of serious issues, but filtered through a monthly Marvel comic sensibility. So even though it is kind of a deconstructionist work, like a Watchmen, they're very distant cousins in the way they actually approach things. As you can see, this is a real mid-'80s Marvel style. Lots of dialogue, lots of tight panels, packed with too many people. But if you can get past that, a pretty satisfying read, and maybe Mark Gruenwald's single best story. Number 95. I'm at a loss here. I've never read this comic. I didn't vote for it, don't worry. But I'm happy to see it on the list, since other people did like it. Moon Knight by Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood. Art looks pretty good. I would say maybe derivative. Not bad. I'm generally a Jeff Lemire fan in general, but I haven't read much, if any, of his superhero work. So I can't say whether I like that or not. But anyway, it's a nice standalone series, and obviously well regarded by enough voters to get on our list. Number 94, Flex Mentallo by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. This is a spin-off of the Grant Morrison Doom Patrol, featuring Flex Mentallo, who's sort of an analog for Charles Atlas, the guy who was in the old comic ads offering to help turn you into a real man so you wouldn't be such a wimp. Nice Frank Quitely art. This is pretty early for Quitely, I think, for American audiences at least. Good looking stuff, good comic, and if you don't want to commit yourself to 40-something issues of Doom Patrol, this would be a good sampler to check him out. At number 93, DC's Invasion. This is a company crossover. There are 3 issues. Showing here the first issue with art by Todd McFarlane, of all people. And this is while he was the artist on Spider-Man. 1988 is when this came out. This, I guess, would have been after Crisis, Millennium, and Legends. This was the 4th crossover of the reconstituted DC universe. And the mastermind of this is Keith Giffen. Dialogue is by Bill Mantlo. Art or inks on this is P. Craig Russell and Al Gordon, Joe Rubinstein, and Todd McFarlane himself in the last chapter. So, great inking team. One of the things I love about this comic, 3 issues, 80 pages, no ads. So it's a 240-page superhero story that's just sort of all meat, no gristle. You know, it's just straightforward. Concerns an alien invasion of Earth. In the first issue, the aliens invade. In the second issue, the superheroes fight them off. And on the third issue, there's a catastrophe that a few of the superheroes have to deal with to help save the rest of them. I'm not going to make an argument that this is Shakespeare, but a very fun superhero comic, and frankly, I would argue maybe the best crossover ever in Marvel and DC superhero history. And I don't believe there's another one on the list anywhere. Number 92, Silver Star. This is from the early 80s, was originally published by Pacific Comics. This is the graphite edition, so it's not in color here. Some ink, some pencils. So this is not what the original published version looked like. It was a 4-color comic. Very late in the game for Kirby, one of his last major pieces. Arguably this and Captain Victory, which you'll see in a little bit, are kind of the last major works he did. But anyway, as you can see, his art still beautiful. Guy's still just pumping out concepts and making very entertaining comics. In Die With Your Mask On number 1 or 2, I can't remember, Ryan Carey writes an essay about the villain from this series. But yeah, definitely not well regarded when it came out, and its reputation has grown over the years. At number 91, Golden Age, by James Robinson and Paul Smith. This was a 4-part miniseries when it came out, 1993 to 1994. Really nice Paul Smith artwork, different from his X-Men heyday that people love so much. He was a real chameleon with his style over the years. But he has this nice retro style for this book. It's about the Justice Society and the 40s heroes in general after they've all kind of retired and gone away, and then what is going on with them in America afterwards. Anyway, very entertaining series, kind of neglected, I think, at this point, and well deserving of being on this list. At number 90, Silver Surfer Black by Donny Cates and Tradd Moore. Colors by Dave Stewart. I also have not read this, so I'm going to have to plead ignorance. I'm assuming this is mostly on here for Tradd Moore's art, which I am familiar with. Pretty beautiful stuff. You know, I'm not a guy who reads a lot of mainstream comics nowadays, so I'm not really familiar with Donny Cates. But I know this series struck a chord with a lot of people. Had plenty of support to get on the list. Pretty beautiful. At number 89, The Rocketeer, something that I imagine most people are familiar with. This is from the early 80s. Was originally published by, I believe, Pacific, and then went on to be published by a couple different companies. And as far as I know, this is all of the Rocketeer work produced by Dave Stevens. He died fairly young. Also, was doing other work to make a living, doing covers and whatnot. And then I believe 1990 or 1991, there was a Rocketeer movie, which I think is fondly remembered, though at the time it was kind of a flop. Disney thought they had another Batman on their hands, and they were mistaken. I think the Rocketeer, he's basically a 40s, 30s pulp hero updated. It's a guy who gets a jetpack and he flies around, and he has a beautiful girlfriend who looks like Betty Page. It's pretty simplistic on the face of it, but it is kind of rip-roaring fun. It is enjoyable. Dave Stevens' art is lush and beloved still. Anyway, there's 100 different versions of the Rocketeer out there. I'd recommend grabbing one if you haven't read it. At number 88, The Jam by Bernie Moreau. This one happens to be in color. A Kamiko special. The Jam was published by a few different companies. Bernie Moreau was a Canadian cartoonist. He did some work for, Grindel. I don't know. He bounced around over the years, tried to do stuff. But I think The Jam is the thing he's most known for. He's sort of an everyman who wears a costume and goes around. It's fairly joyous and positive. Isn't too violent, but pretty fun stuff from a quirky sensibility. Recently, someone did a collection of The Jam in black and white, and it is available on Amazon if you go looking for it. Trying to remember what the name of the trade is, and that is escaping me. But you'll find it. Go look for Bernie Moreau, and you will see it. All right, number 87, Herbie, by Ogden Whitney and Richard E. Hughes, who was writing at the time as Shane O'Shea. Ogden Whitney is the artist. He's the guy who's really associated with this comic. His flat, kind of static art style, which perfectly suits these Herbie comics, which are pretty insane. And so despite the fact there's this strange character and all these bizarre happenings, he still plays it just straight constantly. One of the stranger superhero comics ever made, but it doesn't feel like it's weird for weird's sake, if that makes sense. It's sort of organically strange. These comics are from the 60s, I believe. Pretty sure they're from the 60s. Yeah. Well, 58, 61, 62, 63, 64 by American Comics Group. Anyway, these were republished by Dark Horse in hardcover, 3 volumes, quite a few years ago. But the original issues are surprisingly affordable. Anyway, even if you just want to sample an issue of Herbie or two, you should. It's great. Glad this made the list. Number 86, Glory by Joe Keating and Sophie Campbell. This is another one I've never read. This is an Image comic from I don't know, sometime in the 2000s or 2010s. Not ancient history, but not recent either. Anyway, this series has a lot of fans. Sophie Campbell's gone on to do a ton of work. And this is a revival of an old Rob Liefeld character who, and this thing pretty much has nothing in common with the old Rob Liefeld version. Not the only comic with that description that'll be on this list. I forget how much. I think I want to say there's about 20-something issues of this, so fairly contained. Number 85, The One by Rick Veitch. This is available on Amazon as a print on demand from Rick Veitch. This edition is an IDW, a nice hardcover color version. This is from the early 80s, I think 83. I can't tell right off the bat. Regardless, The One is a deconstructionist superhero comic. Definitely fits in line with Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns, but it is the neglected third part of that triumvirate. This is pretty great. I reread this while I was making my list. Thought even more highly of it than I did in my memory from many years ago. This was a 6-issue series published by Epic once upon a time, and must have hit like a lightning bolt for the people who picked it up. Veitch has a really different attitude towards superheroes than a lot of people. Unlike a lot of the deconstructionists, I'd say he's much more superhero positive than a lot of them are. And he's interested in kind of tearing them down so that he can build them back up, not just tearing them down. Anyway, The One's a great work. It stands alone. It's just a 6-issue series. It's a great graphic novel. All right, number 84. Captain America by Mark Gruenwald and various artists. This is a big old omnibus, so I'll just flip through for a minute. He had a really long run, I think about 10 years on Captain America. He took over the title when it was on the verge of being canceled, if you can believe that, and wrote it for many years until the mid-90s when things were falling apart across the entire industry, and especially at Marvel. So there's a lot of ups and downs to his run. I don't think anybody would argue that it's all stellar, but it's a really good monthly superhero comic. For me, the highlight are the Ron Lim issues. They were paired together for, I forget exactly how long, but pretty fun stuff. Good superhero comics. Here's a fight between Red Skull and Kingpin, which you don't know that you would see anywhere else. Anyway, monthly superhero comics, very straight-faced and earnest, but often entertaining. In 10 years on a corporate character is nothing to sneeze at. At number 83, Miss Fury by Tarp Mills. The only comic strip to make it onto the top 100. This has been chopped up and reassembled to make a book, so this isn't how it would have read originally. Really lovely line work by Tarp Mills. Great hair. Great suits. And, you know, Miss Fury, great costume. Looks very much like the Darwin Cook Catwoman, except better. And just, yeah, really well illustrated, real fun. This is, you know, kind of from the 40s, so it is dated, but still quite entertaining. And, yeah, just such a pleasing art style. Wish there were more collections of this stuff. At number 82, Iron Man, Armor Wars 2. It is the less popular Armor War. The first Armor Wars was a huge hit and made Iron Man a really big seller in the early 80s. This version is from 1990 and ran over the course of 7 or 8 issues. Written by John Byrne, art by John Romita Jr., inks by Bob Wiacek. Let me give credit to the colors here too. Colors are Michael Heisler. And as you can see, the colors in this thing are great. Fantastic pages here. John Romita Jr.'s art, I don't think it's ever looked better. I mean, look at that spread. Look at the coloring. Just incredible. This has been put together in a trade, but it looks so much better on the old newsprint. They aren't worth anything, so if you wanted to put together a run, it would be very easy. Anyway, just delightful work. This is what John Romita Jr. did immediately after leaving Daredevil. And he's clearly just at the peak of his powers. Just top-notch stuff. John Byrne was so knocked out by the art they were doing that he put himself third billed in the credit box. Romita Jr., Wiacek, then Byrne, as the writer, put himself third. Almost unheard of at Marvel back then. And maybe to this day, I don't know. Number 81, Legion of Superheroes, 5 years later. This is probably way too low on the list, but what are you going to do? Not everyone's read it, and not everyone who's read it likes it. So after Paul Levitz's 10 years on Legion of Superheroes, Keith Giffen was given the keys, and he relaunches the title, jumping in time 5 years later. Tight 9-panel grids. It really is kind of for diehards only. It was meant to reward and challenge longtime Legion readers. What's amazing to me is that this got published by DC. But it probably helps that Paul Levitz was an executive, and Legion fandom was so strong at that time that something like this could come out and not just fizzle. Legion had been a hit book all through the 80s. Not all of the art is by Giffen. There are guest artists, but a lot of it is by him. Inks by Al Gordon. Co-written with Tom and Mary Bierbaum, who were two longtime Legion fans. So, as I said, this is a very inside baseball comic, though I think if you committed yourself to it and maybe did a little online reading, you would do just fine. But yeah, Giffen going for it, really utilizing the 9-panel, dense storytelling. Great stuff. And number 80, even. BPRD, Plague of Frogs, Mike Mignola and Guy Davis, and some other people involved, Christopher Golden, Tom Snigoski, if I'm saying his name right, Ryan Sook. Anyway, lots of other people, but Mignola and Guy Davis are the top build. Well regarded. This thing runs for several volumes. The main Hellboy title also makes the list way higher, and not surprisingly, its most well-regarded spin-off gets on there too. Hellboy stands voting. At number 79, Savage Dragon by Eric Larson. Here's the very first issue from way back in July of 92. I was turning 15 that year, and I was down for this stuff. I actually didn't stick with Savage Dragon very long because I got off the Image train. But over the years, I've definitely come back and have collected Dragon and think very highly of the series. Eric Larson's still doing it, 270 or so issues later. And while I don't think anybody would say that this is the most well-written comic in the world, you can certainly see, just a very exciting style. And Eric Larson always had better fundamentals underpinning his work than guys like McFarlane did. So while he was never as popular as, a Liefeld or a Lee or a McFarlane or even a Silvestri, He is the one who has continued to put out his comic for all these years. And it has changed many, many times throughout those years and evolved. But yeah, one of the few superhero comics you can categorize that way. Number 78, One Punch Man. Story is by One. Art is by Yusuke Murata. This is the only manga to make the list. Not that manga is generally known for superheroes, but there are others. One of our voters even had this at number 1 on his list. Art is fantastic. This is another one I haven't read, so I'll have to plead ignorance. Looks great, though. I'm looking forward to trying this one out. Yeah, fantastic stuff. So, very sharp. And I don't have anything else to say about it other than just to show it off for a minute. But it is one I intend to try. Number 77, The Eternals by Jack Kirby. Putting aside this garish coloring on this slick paper. For me, not one of Kirby's best efforts, but even his lesser efforts are still overflowing with ideas and energy. This was made into a movie recently, I believe, that I had no interest in seeing, but and I don't know how much it related to this old stuff. Probably not very much. But yeah, there's still a lot to gain out of these issues. I think it runs for 17 issues in an annual, something like that. But great 70s Kirby at Marvel. When I was a kid, anything post Marvel Age stuff from Kirby was just sort of dismissed and derided totally unfairly to anyone who's bothered to check out that work in recent times. All of it has its charms, and they all have lots of ideas. So this will be the second of many Kirbys to appear on this list. Number 76, The Vision by Tom King and Gabriel Hernandez Walta. This is another one I have not read personally. Not much of a Tom King fan, though at some point I will give this a try. It's the only Tom King that made the list. And a couple of people who don't even really seem to care for Tom King voted for this. That leads me to believe it's one of his better efforts. But yeah, 6-issue miniseries from Marvel. One of the things that made him a big name, even though he's gone on to have bigger successes. Number 75, Captain America from the 40s by Jack Kirby and Joe Simon. This guy here. Generally Captain America 1 through 10 is what we're talking about here. Here's number 1. One of the formative comics from the early years of the industry. You can tell it's dated. You can tell it's from the 40s for sure. But still pretty lively stuff. Hard to recognize it as Kirby at a glance. But still very entertaining, very lively work. Kirby was insanely talented, even as a young man. And this stuff really moves, lots of action. This stuff you can kind of see some 60s Kirby presaged. So anyway, I don't know how highly I'd recommend these personally to someone to read, but of the early Golden Age stuff, the early Supermans, the early Batmans, the early Captain Americas, this is one of the better efforts in that vein, for sure. Not quite Captain Marvel level, but worth reading. Number 74, Plastic Man by Kyle Baker. This series ran for 20 issues from 04 to, I'm guessing, around 06. Done in this digital animation style. Nothing else in comics, in mainstream comics, looked like this at the time. It was totally its own look. Kyle Baker for years was trying to work in animation and make his own movies. And you can see here he is kind of combining what he wanted to do with what he was able to do, which was comics. This is a really fun series, though. Kyle Baker is a legitimately funny cartoonist, which helps. And for a character like Plastic Man that doesn't have die-hard modern fans to complain about a humorous treatment, perfect match of character and creator. I believe these were collected in trades, but once again, it's only 20 issues. Number 73, 1963, by Alan Moore, Stephen Bissette, Rick Veitch, and others. This issue here, this is just one of the 6 issues. Each issue features a different title and a different analog of 60s Marvel. Like this one is drawn by Rick Veitch, inked by Dave Gibbons, lettered by Don Simpson. Fantastic. Here's an ad for a couple of the others. No One Escapes the Fury, Tales of the Uncanny. These are really fun comics. Alan Moore really grasps the energy of those 60s Marvels. And 63 is kind of when it was just getting rolling, really. Also, these text pieces that are in here, Alan Moore writes in a Stan Lee voice, and it is just, well, one, they're hilarious. They're all hilarious. And it's just sharp, venomous satire of Stan Lee's, Carnival Barker persona. Just fantastic stuff. Anyway, these are great. They're not worth anything. You can find them anywhere. Highly recommend. Yeah, even the ads are fake. Shamed by you, English. These are fantastic, though. They're great. Never been collected. Probably never will be collected because most of these people don't talk to each other anymore. There was supposed to be an annual, which was going to match up these characters with the 1993 Image characters drawn by Jim Lee. That never happened. I'm personally glad it never happened because I think these 6 issues are a lot of fun and just kind of special standing on their own. Number 72, Black Panther by Jack Kirby. When Kirby came back to Marvel, one of the titles he ended up taking on was Black Panther. Not for too long, maybe a little over a year. And really fun stuff, really wacky, crazy, in 70s Kirby Marvel kind of way, but really fun stuff, fun comics. Probably has no relation to any Black Panther comic before or since. These are just much stranger. Then, he became a serious character who was meant to address important issues. And so, until Christopher Priest got a little wacky with him in the late 90s, there was no one else who had had this oddball a take on Black Panther. But even Christopher Priest kept him very serious. Kirby is deadly serious. He just can't help but be off the wall. At 71, Captain Victory. I mentioned this earlier. This and Silver Star came out from Pacific Comics. 1981. Really beautiful stuff. Look at this great page. This late era Kirby. He's still kind of firing on all cylinders. These titles don't quite have the big ideas of maybe some of his earlier titles. Here we got some collage going. Nothing beats a Kirby collage, even when it isn't printed very well. But, yeah, the storytelling is just fantastic. On point. Captain Victory, I want to say it's about 15 issues long. I don't think it's ever been collected, which seems like a real crime to me. I'm not really sure why that's the case. Definitely should have a nice collection. Anything Kirby should be preserved, in my opinion. Especially the stuff that he owned. Number 70. X-Force / X-Statix by Peter Milligan and Mike Allred, along with various others. But they're the main ones. This is X-Force number 116. Basically, the old Rob Liefeld version had petered out, and they relaunched as a brand new. The title stayed the same, the numbering stayed the same, but just a brand new team, brand new concept, and really kind of followed another Rob Liefeld concept, Youngblood, where the superheroes are celebrities. In this case, the team gets blown up in the first issue, and they go looking for new people to join, new mutants, so to speak. And this series was a real a real breath of fresh air at the time. Really fun to read month to month. If I'm not mistaken, this is kind of Mike Allred's first big thing for Marvel. He was known for Madman before this. But of course he's gone on to do tons of Marvel and DC work in the intervening years. The art changes here and there as different artists come on, but it stays more or less kind of consistent. At a certain point they relaunched as X-Statix. Just the same team but new title, with these kind of main three characters especially. Anyway, it's a nice long run. Peter Milligan, this is his only appearance on the list. Very surprising to me that his Shade the Changing Man didn't really get any support. But I was glad this was fondly remembered by the voters. Number 69. Daredevil, Love and War, a Marvel graphic novel from 1986, that blessed year. This is written by Frank Miller, obviously the man most associated with Daredevil. Art is by Bill Sienkiewicz. They also collaborated on Elektra Assassin right around this time. And I think you'd have to say the art is the reason to check this book out again. The story isn't anything too much to write home about, but this is when Bill Sienkiewicz was really cooking. Yeah, pretty sharp stuff. One of the better Marvel graphic novels also should be mentioned. And there's 60-something of those. This is definitely one of the better ones. Anyway, if you're a Frank Miller Daredevil fan, this is definitely worth tracking down. Number 68. Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. by Jim Steranko. I'll just show this off. Nice looking stuff. Steranko, never the best drawer in the world, but very fondly remembered for his layouts. Just his page design. I'm not sure if he was doing the color on these. Does it say he was doing the color? Writer and illustrator. Does not list a colorist, so I think he's doing the colors. And these colors are great. They look fantastic all the way through. Look at this. 2-page spread. Really impressive stuff. Never the best writer in the world, but his stuff looked like nothing else at the time, and frankly, there isn't a lot that looks like this now. Pretty crazy he got away with this in a Marvel comic back then. He must have had a pretty long leash. I'll give a shameless plug here for my employer, Fantagraphics. Later this year, we're putting out a 2-volume slipcase set of everything Steranko did at Marvel. Gonna be a pretty amazing book. Or 2 books, I guess. Number 67, Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. The brainchild of Alex Ross, though Mark Waid was brought in to do the writing. I believe later they had kind of a falling out over it. I'm not exactly sure about the particulars. Anyway, this is sort of in a post superhero world where they've all kind of gone off somewhere, and these younger heroes are violent and dark. Clearly they're kind of commenting on Image and what Marvel and DC had done a bit. That leads to some of the big guns coming back, led by Superman. He's serious because he has a black in his emblem now. There's the Spectre and this guy are kind of these narrators that kind of follow things around, and it's supposed to add some kind of religious importance. Really, this comic, it's this kind of stuff. You see the characters years later. What have they turned into? What's become of them? Bruce Wayne, he had his back broken, so he has the brace and stuff. Anyway, various factions, warring factions amongst the superheroes. It's all pretty, I'm going to just go ahead and say it's pretty overwrought. I enjoyed this when it came out, and I'm not saying I wouldn't enjoy it if I sat down and read it right now, but a little self-important. And it definitely owes a debt to a pitch Alan Moore had for sort of an ultimate superhero crossover called Twilight of the Superheroes. But that said, Alex Ross's art's lovely. It's become kind of fashionable. Well, it's been fashionable since he got on the scene to kind of shit on Alex Ross. But I like his work. I think it looks great. It wouldn't work for every comic, but it works for the kind of comics he wants to do, which is what's important. All right, number 66. Captain America in the 70s by Jack Kirby. He had a nice run. He had 2 or 3 years in there. A couple annuals. This is an annual. I picked this particular issue because I read this as a kid. Really loved it. Him fighting the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. At least a version. I mean, Magneto's the only guy that you really care about. But look at this great 2-page. So when Kirby came back, this is his 3rd stint on Captain America. He drew it in the 40s, which we just talked about. Drew it in the 60s, which didn't make the list, but did get some votes. And here's his run in the 70s where he's by himself, Captain America and the Falcon. The Falcon becomes the co-star for a while. Really great 70s Marvel comics. Just straightforward, no bullshit, fun Kirby stuff. Love this version of Captain America running. Anyway, really good, really fun. Yeah, it's nice to see his version of the character unfettered by anyone else. Just doing, no Joe Simon, no Jack Kirby, no Joe Simon, no Stan Lee to deal with, just pure Kirby. Would never argue this is his best work, but it's pretty great. It's a lot of fun. And kind of what you want out of these comics, I think. Especially considering how overwritten and just how laden all the panels were with captions and dialogue in those days. This is like a breath of fresh air to look at these comics. All this action going on. These were considered kind of silly and not prime work by a lot of the Marvel zombies of the time, but history has been kinder. Number 65, The Spectre by Michael Fleischer and Jim Aparo. These are known primarily for an approach of the Spectre where he just brutally murders any criminals. That's what it became known for, and I believe that's eventually why they quit doing it, quit allowing it to be published, because they just thought these guys were going a little too far. I think Jim Aparo's art is fantastic on these. I really love his 80s work, but This is really sharp, really fun comics. Michael Fleischer, you know, he did this. He had a nice run on Jonah Hex. He's also known as the guy who sued the Comics Journal because Harlan Ellison said that he was bugfuck, and that led to like a 7-year lawsuit that was miserable for everyone involved. And you know, so he's a strange figure in comics history, but yeah, kind of a singular writer. I'm glad these comics made the list. There isn't really anything else like them, and this stuff's pretty available. They put out an omnibus not too long ago. Worth checking out. At number 64, Superman for the Man Who Has Everything. Let me find the right thing I'm looking for here first. Oh, I'm killing joke. Here we go. All right. This is from Superman Annual 11, 1985. So this is right before Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons do Watchmen. They do this. Fantastic one-and-done story where Batman and Robin and Wonder Woman are going to the Fortress of Solitude to wish Superman a happy birthday. This seems like it's from 3 lifetimes ago that this kind of comic would exist. And when they get there, he's been taken over by this, whatever's going on. What they don't know is that in his mind, he is on Krypton, and he's grown. The world has not been destroyed. Meanwhile, these guys find out that Mongul is in the Fortress of Solitude. He's the one who's done this to Superman, and they have to try to fight him. I won't give away too much more other than to say, beautifully drawn by Gibbons. One of the best Superman comics ever made. Not surprising when it's Alan Moore. I think this and another one of his stories, which will appear way down the list, are the best Superman comics ever made, in my personal opinion, though another one gets even higher on our list. Anyway, this is a great comic, worth reading in any format. Yeah, just fantastic stuff. Highly recommended it. At number 63, The Spirit by Will Eisner and various other people working in his studio. Though Eisner apologists never liked that to be mentioned, that there are other people working on this stuff. You know, some people don't think of The Spirit as a superhero comic, including Eisner himself. I think that's self-serving. The guy wears a costume. He fights criminals. He has a code name, The Spirit. But yes, by modern, post Silver Age sensibilities, it doesn't look very much like a superhero comic, does it? This appeared in the newspapers, but nobody really considers it a strip. It was part of a supplement, so it has a comic book look to it. Beautiful, beautiful ink work by Eisner, known for his innovative page layouts, these innovative splash pages. Yeah, and just really gorgeous work. Ran for years and years. DC put out 20-something volumes of the archives. So yeah, there's plenty out there to find. I think, find a sampler book like this. You're probably good. If you love it, then you can go deep. Number 62, Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison and Dave McKean. A standalone graphic novel that, when did this come out? 89. They sold a shitload of these things. It was a huge hit. It's a dark Batman story where he has to go to Arkham, see the Joker. Early example of painting in comics, this fully painted style in service to a Batman comic. Personally, I don't think very highly of this one, but clearly the voters felt differently, had plenty of votes to get on the list. And it's hard to say anything bad about Dave McKean's art, which is fantastic. So your mileage may vary. It's like I said, it's sold 1 billion copies practically. So people continue to discover it and to enjoy it. Number 61, Tom Strong by Alan Moore, Chris Sprouse, and various. This is part of Alan Moore's ABC Comics line, sort of an homage to Doc Savage and other pulp titles. Yeah, a lot of fun, you know, using science and adventure. The ABC line in general is very strong, and this thing ran for, I want to say, around 30 issues. There's other comics. Here you go, some nice Dave Gibbons artwork on this. Always nice to see the two of them together, since we'll probably never see it again. But anyway, Dave Sen, where'd that come from? Tom Strong, very fun, very light. Chris Sprouse's artwork looks great. Was a real antidote for the time, when dark comics seemed to be so pervasive. Number 60. You can't even really fit this in the screen, can you? Elektra Lives Again. This is by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley. I'm trying to get that in there. This is another one where I'd argue that the main reason to get this is for the art. The Frank Miller art with kind of painted colors by Lynn Varley. The story is pretty slight. You know, he's sort of dreaming or having visions about Elektra, who has been killed. But, Daredevil, that is, Matt Murdock. But just look at these pages. I mean, beautiful, beautiful work. Some of the best artwork Frank Miller's ever produced. Yeah, you can really see where he's going in a few years. This looks like a direct prequel to Sin City. That work doesn't come out of nowhere, you know, kind of the way it might have seemed to someone who hadn't read this stuff. You can really see how he's working on certain things. Anyway, if you're a Frank Miller person, I highly recommend it. And I recommend this version. This was published by Epic in 1990. So, just before he would go on to do Sin City. Pretty sharp looking book, though. Alright, number 59. Ambush Bug by Keith Giffen, Robert Loren Fleming, and I think generally inked by Bob Oxner, who's kind of a journeyman cartoonist of humor comics, but does great work on this. Keith Giffen is the real mastermind of this. Robert Loren Fleming is doing the dialogue, but it's definitely a Keith Giffen production. You can see how dense these pages are, but not packed so tightly with words you can't read them. But really beautiful stuff. This is another comic that had a voter vote for it number 1. And it was an off-the-wall pick for sure, but kind of hard to argue with it. There's a nice chunk of these Ambush Bug comics, but no more than wouldn't even fill out it'd be a small omnibus, basically, if you put them all together. But these look great, these original versions. This one is from 1985. He was meant to be sort of a Bugs Bunny type wacky character, and yeah, pretty funny stuff, actually, and really shows off Giffen's quirky sensibility. Number 58, Astro City. Life in a Big City is the first book. That's what I have here. Kurt Busiek, art by Brent Anderson, character designs by Alex Ross. This is sort of a love letter to superheroes. Astro City is the city where all this takes place, and there's various analogs of superheroes of all stripes. You know, this guy like a Jack in the Box. He's sort of a Spider-Man, Daredevil type character. Doesn't have the same powers, abilities, all that, but just a street level fighter guy. Anyway, there's now been quite a bit of Astro City comics made, and it seems like the reputation has sort of just faded over the years. But these were a real breath of fresh air when they came out. And, yeah, good, clean family fun. And I think Kurt Busiek does not get the credit he deserves for being able to infuse pathos into some of these sort of bombastic superhero comics. He's better at that than just about anybody else I can think of the people who write straightforward superhero comics. Number 57, Thor, God of Thunder, by Jason Aaron and Assad Rabik, if I'm saying his name correctly, Rabik. This is another one I haven't read personally, so looking forward to giving it a try. I'm familiar with Jason Aaron as a Vertigo writer, but I haven't read anything by him for many years. But this one got votes. I was surprised, not because I think it's bad or anything, but because I just really wasn't familiar with it. But it made the list easily, and apparently still has a fairly strong reputation. Rabic's artwork looks great. So, there you go, Thor. God of Thunder. 3 Thor comics made the list, and that was one of them, so he's in pretty good company. Number 56, The Avengers, by Roger Stern, John Buscema, Tom Palmer. I'm sure there's some fill-in artists, but more or less that's the team that we're talking about. Roger Stern wrote The Avengers for the better part of 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And it's a really satisfying run, a great monthly superhero comic. John Buscema and Tom Palmer's art looks great during this period. Yeah, and just the characterization is handled really well. Yes, they're getting in fights, and this series sort of culminates in a giant fight with the Masters of Evil, where the Avengers Mansion is destroyed, and that's kind of considered the high point. It's a lot of great heroic action, but he really handles the interpersonal dynamics of the characters. It feels like there's sort of personal stakes for these characters in a way that's not that common in a lot of these comics. And part of that was because he was on there for so long, and another part of it is just because Roger Stern's a good superhero writer. One of the better monthly superhero comics of its era. Number 55, Thor, The Mighty Thor, by Walt Simonson. He's the auteur. Somewhere along the line, Sal Buscema comes aboard and is the color or the main artist, and he works in a Simonson style. I'll go ahead and shout out the lettering by John Workman, who worked on a lot of Simonson stuff. No one else's lettering looks like his. Anyway, this widely considered the best Thor comic since the Kirby Thor from the 60s. Thor had been pretty fallow before. Simonson came aboard, really revitalized the title. The artwork was exciting. The stories got big. He really leaned into the Asgardian aspect. And he had a nice chunky run on it for a few years. Very well regarded stuff, and fun, and the greatest sustained work of Simonson's career. Excuse me. Number 54, Silver Surfer, Parable. This is notable because it's it's Mobius. It's Mobius's only appearance on the list. Of course, Mobius, not exactly known as a superhero guy. Written in quotes by Stan Lee. This is the only Stan Lee comic on the list where he's not with Kirby or Ditko. Yeah, basically, this one's on the list for the art. It looks very sharp. It's really washed out in this newsprint edition, but I really like it, actually. It's available in a ton of different formats, though, so you can find it in all kinds of ways. It was printed as, I believe, as a nice hardcover at the time. But anyway, looks great. Great Mobius stuff. Silver Surfer was a good choice because it wasn't that superhero-y, you know? I don't know if you would have wanted to read a Captain America comic drawn by him necessarily. You probably would have because it's Mobius. But Silver Surfer was a nice, close enough to Mobius' sci-fi roots. Anyway, it's just a 2-issue series from 1988. Kind of an oddball comic. Not that it's odd that it exists, but it's just that it's Mobius doing Marvel superheroes. Number 53, Stardust, by Fletcher Hanks, the Super Wizard. These are from the early 40s. These were sort of resurrected by Paul Karasik, I think in the pages of Raw originally, and then eventually collected by Fantagraphics. A new version of this just came out in paperback. This hardcover is out of print. And anyway, these are these were rediscovered and sort of blew everyone's mind because they're so batshit crazy. It's weird. You look at these are kind of like just boring pages, really boring pages. But then, something crazy will happen and this guy will do something just psychotic in big waves. He's a really strange looking character. Apparently Fletcher Hanks himself was just an alcoholic, a terrible person, ended up just kind of dying. Like dying on a park bench or something. But anyway, crazy Golden Age stuff, and definitely nothing else like this on the list. It is singular by itself. Number 52, Invincible, by Robert Kirkman, Ryan Otley, and Cory Walker, I think, is the... Cory Walker was the co-creator with Kirkman. He couldn't quite hack it, I don't think, doing a monthly book, so Ryan Otley came aboard and did the series for many, many years. I think this thing ran for about 12 years or so. Anyway, it's basically, I don't know, there's a show out there, you can go watch that. These are very readable, though. They're a lot of fun. Kirkman's a good storyteller in the sense that he keeps you turning the page. So he's a young superhero, but like I said, this thing runs for a long time. A lot of characters come and go. The art, there you go, this is kind of Larson-esque. The art's a little flat, but it does the job. And I think it's pretty creative, pretty fun stuff, actually. It kind of gets overlooked, I think, because The Walking Dead was so gigantic. But this is pretty damn successful, too. Alright, and here's the last one I'll do for this video. You poor souls who've made it this far. Number 51, Steve Ditko's Mr. A. This is him doing his own comics for himself. Mr. A is an objectivist superhero. He sees the world in black and white. And it's kind of the basis for, not kind of, he was the basis for Rorschach from Watchmen. The Question was the direct character that they were using, but Mr. A's black and white sensibilities and Ditko's own objectivist beliefs are what Moore was pulling from to make Rorschach how he was. These are pretty dense pages. Not very action-y, though there's some stuff in here, but this is nice looking Ditko work. And I'm not sure how much more Mr. A material there is. Hopefully we'll be getting books of this stuff now that Ditko has passed and his family is a little more amenable to getting his work out there. Be nice for this kind of stuff to be printed nicely and rediscovered. So that's it. That was number 100 through 51. I'll do another video of 50 through 1. Unless I decide I want to get chatty about maybe some of the top ones. Maybe I'll do a third one. But at the very least, 100 through 51 are done. Where's my issue at? As discussed, Die With Your Mask On, number 3, featuring the 100 best superhero comics of all time. This is available at canonzine.bigcartel.com. I will put a link in the show notes. And if you're interested, please order a copy. I have plenty on hand, and they're waiting to find good homes and interested readers. And I'll be back. Thanks.